What does it mean when someone in the military says they were part of the 101st etc.? Oh boy, this one is a doozy. So the short version is this. The US military loves to number shit. Like, really loves numbering shit. So when you join the army you may get assigned to Roman 3 Armored Corps, 1st Armored Division, 402nd Field Artillery Brigade, C Company, 1 Platoon, 1st Squad. Meaning you're a PFC E3 in 1 AD, 402 FA BD. The numbers may or may not be in any particular order. Just because the 101st Airborne Division exists doesn't mean there are 100 other airborne divisions. Numbers get created, removed, retired, reinstated, changed, transferred to other services, etc. all the time. The 101st is an airborne division, meaning a really large unit, commanded by a Major General 2 stars consisting, or 12,000 people roughly. The numbers are not necessarily sequential, and don't indicate how many there currently are. It's a mixture of adding on past units that are now dormant, and past practices of trying to confuse enemy intelligence in what the exact troop strength was. I have more experience with this in the Navy, so to use them as an example, the fighter squadron VFA numbers are all over the place. There is a VFA 2, a VFA 41, a VFA 113, a VFA 146 etc. That's a direct legacy of the US Navy not wanting Imperial Japan to know how many fighter squadrons there were, and by extension, how many aircraft carriers the US Navy had operational. Unit, not team. The 101st is a division, which is a size of a unit. The unit numbers at the division level are generally not sequential, no. It typically goes Army or Corps, Division, Brigade, Regiment, Battalion, Company, Platoon, Section, Squad, Team, Fire Team. The 101st is a division, which typically consists of a mix of companies, brigades, and battalions. The bulk of the fighting forces are typically within maneuver brigades, supported by a headquarters company and support battalions. 101st Airborne, Screaming Eagles. What you're referring to is probably Infantry Regiment n.wikipedia.org Wiki Infantry Branch United States, and it's how the US Army organizes its infantry into groups called for logistics purposes. Generally speaking, numbers 1,100 are allotted for regular Army regiments, 101,300 are for National Guard regiments, and 300 and up is for National Army regiments. The National Army hasn't been active since the suspension of the draft in 1973. With a few exceptions, the regiments are numbered sequentially in the order that they were created. Not all of the numbers are used for a regiment at any time. In WW2 we only got up to a 91st Infantry without ever making or needing to make a 92nd. Thank goodness, and they are often made inactive when they are no longer needed. They are probably referring to the 101 Airborne, a very reputable group in the US Army. If you know someone in the 101st, be sure to tell them Airborne all the way. They'll be sure to appreciate it. A key point is that these numbers are random and inflated to confuse the enemy. The enemy figures out that there is a 633 squadron. Can they infer that there are at least 632 other squadrons? No, because the numbers aren't assigned sequentially. I don't know a ton about this, but I know that many units get created during times of war and then get combined into other units during times of peace. I don't know that this has happened since maybe Vietnam. I'm just guessing. I do know that my granddad was part of a bombardment group during WW2, and when I went to look up his unit, it got retired pretty much right after the war, and all of the remaining staff probably got put with other groups. So I'm assuming if you had a big list, you would see a lot of gaps in the sequence of modern units. That they're just a boot. They use bigger numbers to keep the enemy from knowing how many troops we actually have. Most would be stealing valor. My friend's dad was in the 101st. Tight as shit. If everybody who says they were in the 101, they'd have been the biggest division in history. In the old days, it was sometimes to obscure the size of your military might to the enemy. Like, if you have a 200th Tank Division, but the enemy doesn't know you only have 3 divisions total, that will affect their strategy during conflicts against you. Likewise with arms, you might have serial numbers starting at a very high number, or scaling by multiple numbers at a time instead of just increasing sequentially. Wow, been living under a rock? RAF-22 SQN was formed to fly escort to 7 Squadron. The heralds say this and put the letter Pi on their shield. I asked about my wife's grandfather's unit numbers in R. Ask Historians. 11.kp.g.r.458 FB 31,928D Truppentail 11.1732.458. Needless to say, I think the numbers game is in every military. What? Not an American perspective, but it's a military one nonetheless. Large, institutional militaries will often have oddly named and non-sequential unit numbers. For example, the Russian 76th Guards Air Assault Division. There are not 75 previous Guards Air Assault Divisions, but the 76th at one point was the 76th Guards Rifle Division, and converted into an airborne unit. This means by paratrooper rather than helicopter insertion, although many units do both. Then an air assault unit which does do helicopter insertions. There are other air assault units too, not sequentially named either. There is also the 7th Guards Mountain Air Assault Division, which is for high altitude flying. But they aren't necessarily the only ones who do that either. My point being, the military, regardless of which one, does not name things conventionally. When the 33rd Brigade is decommissioned, the 34th does not drop a number, it remains the 34th. Same thing with most large militaries. Units get raised up, disbanded, merged, and split all the time.